Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I'm so stoked to be here. My promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business and help you stay social. Because after all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? I know I do. And I'm so stoked today to have Ken Paskins with me. Welcome, Ken.
Hey, thanks, Lorraine. Great to be here.
Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what you do and who you serve?
Yeah, so ShiftSpot is a community for CEOs and business owners. We surround them by experts, and we have over 144 events for the year to support CEOs in their growth through life, to help elevate their business and help them get to a place where they're working on the business versus in the business. And we've been doing it for a couple of years. And prior to that, I was a fractional executive, and my kids called me a fixer, where people would hire me to actually go in and fix their business or help them with M&A and everything. And it became a passion of mine, helping entrepreneurs break through. And the ShiftSpot is basically, I look at it as kind of my legacy and an ability to help more.
What made you do this? Like shifting from actually going into a company and working with a particular company and fixing them to have a ShiftSpot?
Yeah, so I still own the other company. It's a consulting firm, and it's a group of executives. And but I started to see a lot of the same movies play over and over, such as, and I grew up in this entrepreneur environment. I took the corporate route. My father did not, but I saw him make a ton of mistakes, right? And making a lot of emotional decisions versus database-driven decisions, throwing bodies at problems versus systemizing and putting processes in place and things of that nature. Not understanding cash flow or how to read a P&L, not understanding the basics of hiring and firing and leadership. And, like I said, when I was doing it fractionally as a fractional CEO, COO, I could help 2 to 3 clients at a time. And quite honestly, I saw a lot of these repeat movies, and I wanted to be able to help more individuals reach more, and honestly try to help with the failure rate. I'm sure you know it, but the first year, 35% of companies fail. And after 5 years, 50% fail. So I believe surrounding them with experts and other peers, and through that journey helps give them a leg up on their competition.
That's awesome. A lot of people, that are in business for themselves, they talk about they want to scale, they want to scale, they want to scale. What do you think are some key things that prevents companies from scaling?
Quite a few, actually. It's not just one, but the first one is just yourself, right, as an individual, and being able to let go and delegate to your staff. And that's not automatic. You have to have the right staff in place to be able to delegate. So there's got to be a trust factor there to start. But some of the areas that we work on in the ShiftSpot, those core areas actually help through that. So the basics of leadership and management, and what does that mean? Finances, we spend a lot of time in that, right? And helping business owners understand how to use numbers and their financials as a competitive tool, if you will. Understanding the basics of sales and marketing, right? And where to make investments and how to make investments into those as well. And then, as I'd stated earlier, systems and processes. But it starts really with the human capital aspect and surrounding yourself with the right people and getting the right people in the right seats, if you will, and then building that trust and knowing how to let go. And I think that a lot of owners struggle with that. And I see that systemically, because when we start a company, right, it's just us, right? And our staff will come to us and say, hey, we're having pizza this Friday. You want pepperoni or cheese? And it starts with that one decision, and we keep doing it. So we maintain, all decisions come through us, right? And we're the solver of all problems. And then we're buried in the weeds, and we've got to separate from that.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. As starting off as just me and then making my first hire and then making my second hire.
Yeah.
It's you kind of like, it's your baby. You want everything to work just so. And because of that, there's, you make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
I know I've made a lot of mistakes by not delegating sooner.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. There's a lot of things you said earlier that you gave some statistics about 35% of businesses, I guess, fail in the first year.
Yeah.
Up to 50% moving
in year 5.
And those statistics, they change. I've heard higher numbers, but interestingly, why do you think they fail? What do you think is a key factor? And I know you're going to probably say yourself, but there's other things. There's other things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I'm a firm believer that it is just because they don't surround themselves with the right individuals and they learn on the job. And I can say that because, we won't have time to go into my deep story, but what started me in the corporate route is I grew up in an entrepreneur family. And my dad never worked for anyone, and his dad never worked for anyone. So he started companies, and sometimes money is falling out of the sky, and it was great. And literally, there were other times where my mom was taking me to the bank to borrow money to pay the phone bill because something something busted, right? So I grew up with a lot of ups and downs, which led me to to take the corporate route to start. But 50% of all business owners and CEOs and entrepreneurs in small companies actually learn from themselves, right? So think about that. And you've owned your company for some time. You teach yourself what a cash flow statement is, a P&L, and how to read those. You teach yourself about hiring and firing and mentoring staff. You teach yourself about systems and process and project management and all those things. And that's daunting, right? That's daunting for experts, but it's also, imagine just being new to it all the time. Chances are you're gonna fail more than you're gonna succeed. Right. And that's also the glory that successful entrepreneurs reap from those benefits. But, I believe that is fundamentally it. I mean, fortunately, we live in a society that loves entrepreneurs and everything, but it comes with a lot of us learning on the job from ourselves from scratch. Right. So I do believe firmly that is one of the major reasons. And, just growing up as a child, I saw it time and time again.
Yeah. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur now for at least, 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And my husband's always been an entrepreneur. He worked for somebody when he was in high school.
Okay.
Then he was done.
Yeah.
And we say we've always done pretty well. I mean, he's a very successful contractor and but there's been crazy times.
There's been mistakes, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, we have a little stack. We call it the Bank of Duncan because Duncan is my last name. And literally we have a stack of people who haven't paid us. And every year, and it's, this is from years ago, we actually get paid more than we don't get paid. And don't have many of those anymore because we take a certain amount of money up front. And so
good.
But anyways, the funny story is with this is every year I send this pile to a collection agency. And you don't make any money on when it does get collected, but it's just the principle of the thing. Yeah. And so you get some back. But 1 year, the collection agency was able to settle with 6 people. And you know what? To us, it was free money because it was
you wrote it off.
We wrote it off and we never thought we'd get it back again.
Right.
So I'm sure you've heard some crazy business stories. What one can you share with us that would?
Oh God, I've been involved in some crazy ones. So probably the craziest one, I had this gentleman out of Puerto Rico, and he owned an online supplement company, and he brought his COO, and he kind of stepped into more of the CEO visionary seat and had this person run their company. And he was doing about 10 million in revenue. And they had this conversation earlier on that, look, if we outgrow each other, that's fine. We'll have a conversation and we'll separate gracefully, yada, yada, yada. Well, I started and he wanted me to help elevate and coach this person. About 2 weeks into it, I went to the guy and I said, you got to fire them. Right. And he was shocked, actually. And I said, look, they're cancerous. Here's what I see. And he's like, oh my goodness. He's like, they're so critical to the business. They head up all of our relationships from a production perspective and everything. And, and I was like, all right, so what do you want to do? And he's like, well, let's migrate him out of the company for 3 months. I'm like, okay, bad idea, but you're the guy and you make the call. I just exposed the risk. So as we're going through that process, I identified that this person had embezzled $250,000 from him. I'll say that, and that's it. She had 6 different aliases. And as we looked into her background. I've never known anyone in prison or whatever, but evidently there's a phone number that you use to call prisoners. And I don't know, I'm assuming so you can record in conversations, but she had a phone number to talk to prisoners and just bad stuff. Right. And we spoke to an attorney and the attorney is like, look, you can go after her. Probably cost you $500,000. You might win, you might not. She could countersue you, and all that. And he got in a really bad spot because of the supplements and all the relationships with the different companies that were making these pills or whatever for him. And she got him sideways with a lot of those relationships and just not a great person. So I had to help him end up selling his IP off and get rid of the company to protect himself from a liability perspective. And he went on and did some other things and was successful. But it was just just that was probably the most tragic I've seen, and it just highlights the importance of hiring good people and doing your due diligence and not just looking at a resume and believing what somebody says. So, but it was scary.
Yeah, I can imagine. I would be petrified. I get scared if I get a note from the IRS or something. It's like, I can't imagine going through that.
Yeah.
This is the part of the show where we get real. And so what do you love most about being in business for yourself?
I love, let's see, what do I love the most? Probably just the flexibility and freedom to determine how hard I want to work and everything, to be quite honest. And right now I'm putting a lot into it because I'm very passionate about it. But I also, because I believe in what I'm doing so much, it's not as much of a burden, I guess is the best way to put it, than if I was working for somebody else. So I love being a part of our community. I love giving back. I love helping, typically younger and less experienced CEOs and entrepreneurs make it to the next level. So I know that was a loaded answer, but that's what I love the most.
No, I love that answer. And so we both know, both of us, that owning a business has its share of struggles.
Yeah.
And what would you say would be your number one struggle in today's current economy?
Yeah, it's always people, right? We have a podcast as well, and I'm connected to, I don't know, at least 3,500 CEOs out on LinkedIn, and I work with CEOs and business owners, day in, day out, and have been for years. And it's really people, right? Human capital is one of the most challenging things, right? So you got to hire correctly. You got to know when to fire. You got to know when to coach up. You got to know when to move on and identify what the right talent is. And even when you check all those boxes, sometimes, unfortunately, we make mistakes, right? And those mistakes are extremely costly. So I would say today's economy, yesterday's economy, tomorrow's economy, it's always people, right? I forget who said it. It was a long time ago, but business would be easy if we didn't have people, right? People for our clients and people for our employees. But we have people.
My grandfather always used to say, never trust anybody with 2 holes in their nose. When I was little, I would always just kind of look at him, and then I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Now I kind of understand that. So if there was one piece of universal advice that you could give to, a startup, someone who's seasoned, or someone who is thinking of going into their own business, what would that be?
Yeah. So startup, but seasoned, and somebody that's thinking about going into their own business. And I would say, first and foremost, have a plan doubt your plan and have it reviewed by others. And a lot of companies or owners will go into things optimistically, right? I've got this great idea. It's the greatest in the world, and no one's ever created or come up with it. Well, that might be red flag number one. I mean, you might be, Musk, but you might not. And if it's not out there, then you got to question if it's a great idea. But battle test those ideas and make sure that before you begin laying out the investments of time and specifically time. A lot of times initially it's not even money, it's time. Your time it's worth money, right? Make sure that idea is battle tested. Do your alpha test, beta tests, have conversations with folks, and go about it the right way. And then recognize if it's not a great idea and doesn't have legs and take off, recognize when to pull the plug, not continue to throw money at it.
Yeah, that's so good. One book that you've read, business book that you've read that actually helped you move forward in your business or really encouraged you or was amazingly great and helped you come up with some business concepts.
Yeah, there's so much there you threw out. But one of my go-to books that I recommend to a lot of folks, I recommended to a gentleman today that he works for one of our clients, and he was all disappointed that he did not get this VP of sales position, and it just doesn't have the background and everything. And the CEO asked me if I could just chat with him as a favor. He's like, "Can you talk to this guy?" Because it's like I told him, I said, somebody's got to shoot this guy straight, and the CEO couldn't. And I chatted with them and I said, look, I can't help you in an hour, right? But here's what you need to do. Surround yourself with people, right? Get the experience. If you can't hear, put a career path in place where you can, right? And go out and, read some things, but not everything comes from a book. But to answer your question, one of my go-tos is The 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell. And I love it. And I like to work with a lot of leaders on that book and have them actually, read it and then begin to apply it. And there's some really cool, surveys out there that you can send out anonymously to, your staff and have them rank you. And it's kind of like a 360, but not a full 360. But John Maxwell is a great, writer, in my opinion. And that's one of my go-to books.
Yeah, I love John Maxwell. So I want to thank you for being a part of my podcast. If somebody has resonated with you or wants to get to know you a little bit better, how would they do that? And do you have something to offer my audience?
Yeah, we do. So just go to theshiftspot.com and we've got everything right there about our community, cost, testimonials, all the lovely stuff that you expect to see on a website, right? And then for your listeners, one thing that I started when I was a consultant is I have this thing called this gap analysis, and it's a ton of questions that go across your entire company, and from sales to marketing to finance to operations, you name it. And it really crystallizes and gives business owners some of the insights into gaps in their company where they can make the biggest impact to help them scale. It's a $5,000 value. And in our community, we give it for free to our community members, obviously, but to your members and the people listening to it, go to theshiftspot.com/gap. Once again, shiftspot.com/gap. And put in a code BizGoneSocial podcast in there. And we're going to pick 2 of your listeners. So it takes a lot of work, but we'll do a full analysis of them and we'll spit out the findings, have a conversation with them and point out some of the areas that, the areas of opportunity to work on that could be getting in their way.
That's awesome. I want to thank you again. So everybody out there, this is the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram @BizGoneSocial for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.